Dr. Q, and the other co-host is
Dimmer.
Dimmer Switch Disco. Yes, and today it'll just be us. We won't be having a guest today, but today we'll be talking about a movie. I'm sure some of you have heard of it, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. We both watched it and took a couple notes before this episode. Would you like to tell our audience members a little bit about the movie and why we chose it?
Yes, mostly we chose it. Neither of us had ever seen it before. We chose it because people keep bringing it up. Maladaptive Daydreamers really seem to relate to a lot of what is in this film, and they bring it up. They mention it a lot, and for a hot second, there was a time when a couple of publications, as maladaptive daydreaming was gaining awareness, kind of called it Walter Mitty disease.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was being the two were being compared very early on in MD's conception.
Lifespan. Yeah, and we can after watching the movie we can see why. There's a lot of there's a lot of things that like make sense. Okay, as a maladaptive daydreamer, right? So I started watching this movie, right? And I was told I'm not a movie watcher. I don't like watching movies, mainly because I don't have the time. and you'd be like, yes, it's only like an hour and a half or like 2 hours, and it's like, yes, that's 2 hours I don't have. But I was able to find the time, this time around. I was watching, and I'm like, why are we picking this? And then suddenly there's like a scene which, like, as a maladaptive daydreamer, where you just like zone into your daydreaming world, and it's just like this massive ordeal, and then suddenly you like pop on out. Like there it was that. I guess I called it at the time. I'm like, wow, that's a daydreamer moment. I'm like, ah, my god, because it was a scene where he's just sitting on a bench, or he's like waiting for a train to work, right? His mundane 9 to 5 job of sorts. I would like to mention spoilers in this movie. If you would like to watch this movie with no spoilers, do so now or forever hold your peace, because we will be
Yeah,
discussing.
definite spoilers.
We will be discussing the movie at length, ad nauseum. We will be discussing the movie and its various parts and scenes. With that said, they within the movie there's several like daydreaming scenes where like he'll like go and then like he'll zone out, right? And the first one, this is what had me sold on the movie. The first one was he was sitting on this like bench waiting for a train, and he was talking to this guy for like an eHarmony website or something like that, some dating website. And then suddenly he says, "I gotta go," and then he like runs and jumps off of this like massive bridge and like flies into a window, and it's utter chaos, and the building is like going nuts, and like falling down and exploding and stuff. And he like runs out with this dog, and he saved this dog, right? And you're like, wow, this is like a fantasy movie, because it's suddenly turned into fantasy or whatever. And then it just suddenly cuts back to real life, and the guy on the phone, he never hung up the phone, right? He never hung up the phone. He never walked away or whatever. He just like zoned out and was talking to the guy. And the guy's like, "Hello, you still there?" And not only is the guy like is this guy still on the phone calling me, because Walter Mitty called the guy, and the guy's waiting for like Walter Mitty, main character of the movie, to just like keep conversing, but he's zoned out, right? And he's zoned out so far that not only does the guy on the other side of the phone not know if he's there, the train came, everybody went on the train, and the train left. And now he's zoned back in as the train's leaving, and the guy's like, "Hello, hello," right? And that happens several times throughout the movie. The villain is what would you say about the villain? Like, he's just it's not that he's like evil, he's just like a dick. That's really just it. He's just like,
Yeah, like he's so much of a dick that it actually broke my suspension of disbelief. Like people don't act like that, and if they do, fucking go to HR.
it was
Like he
pretty
was so
bad.
much yeah, he was so much of a dick. I wasn't sure if Walter Mitty was daydreaming it sometimes. Maybe we should give like a plot summary.
Okay, cool. Would you like to do that?
Yeah, let me look one up.
Absolutely. Welcome to Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. Here at Parallel Lives, we too use encyclopedias.
Okay, so here's one from I think it's IMDb.
Mhm.
The manager of negative assets for Life magazine, Walter Mitty's been working for 16 years and has a tedious life not going anywhere but to and from work. He's an escapist, daydreaming into a fantasy world many times a day. He has a crush on recently hired Cheryl, but he's too shy to invite her out, so he was trying to contact her via online dating. The magazine's preparing to release its last printed edition, and the loathsome manager of the transition is preparing an inevitable downsizing. Walter
Mhm.
has been the liaison between the magazine and the mysterious independent photographer Sean O'Connell, who has sent him a package of negatives and a wallet as a gift. Sean also suggests to the management the use of negative 25 for the cover of the last edition. However, Walter cannot find the missing negative. Walter has no means to contact Sean and finds a clue that he might be in Greenland. He decides to travel to Greenland to track down Sean and begins his unbelievable adventure. So I just, I don't know. So
So
hold
there's
on.
the plot summary.
There's a plot summary. Walter Mitty, um, because you see people a lot say like Walter Mitty has maladaptive daydreaming or that this movie is about maladaptive daydreaming, and I just want
Mhm.
to cut that off at the knees because it is not.
Mhm.
Oh, well, we might be able to relate to it. It's got like a lot of MD themes in it. It is not about MD. Okay. This was
Mhm.
originally written as a short story in the New Yorker by James Thurber, 1939. This was like, how many years is that?
Almost
Like
100.
80, almost
Almost
100
a
years,
century.
80 something years ago, 83 years ago.
Mhm.
Um,
And
and
they didn't
how
even
old, yeah, how old is MD? Like as a concept? 20?
they didn't even did they even have the solution to polio back then? I don't think they
I,
did.
I don't
I
know.
don't think they didn't have a lot of medical solutions for a lot of things, let alone the stuff in the brain. So I'm pretty sure. I mean, perhaps the writer suffered from MD or something similar, daydreaming a lot.
I
Like
knew you would
that was
say that, so I looked it up. Or not you
okay.
maybe, but I knew someone would say that.
All right.
He did not. Well, I
Really?
mean, obviously he's dead and we will never know for certain. But what he actually had, he got shot in the eye with an arrow when he was a child. They were playing
Mhm.
some game and he got shot in the fucking eye.
Mhm.
Um, which led to a thing called Charles Bonnet syndrome.
Oh.
Yes, that's what he had. So it's this thing where you're like significantly visually impaired.
Mhm.
Uh, your brain will start screwing with you, and you'll see hallucinations, a lot of different shapes and things,
Mhm.
you'll see things not the size that they're supposed to be. Like things will look much smaller than they're meant to be.
Mhm.
And Thurber he was a writer, he was a cartoonist, he was a creative, and he credited these hallucinations that he was having as the inspiration for the things that he was drawing and writing about. So that's the actual story. Like if Walter
Mhm.
Mitty was based on anything loosely, it's sort of Charles Bonnet syndrome. Like that's where the
Mhm.
inspiration came from, not from MD as far as we're aware, but from this eye injury.
Mhm. Actually, the secret truth is that this was all a ploy made by the author just so that he could find out about MD 100 years prior, so that he knew that 100 years in the future. Who is the actor and director? Oh my God, I know his name. It's not coming to me.
Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller. So because he knew that Ben Stiller would make this movie over his short story, and then
I have
everyone would
things
equate
to
it to
say
MD.
about that too.
He knew 100 years in advance. He got a Luigi board and he asked the spirits, and the spirits told him. And now we're here 100 years later talking about it.
This movie isn't based on the short story. This movie is based on the first movie. So,
Mhm.
in case you didn't know, there's 2 Secret Lives of Walter Mitty.
Oh my
So
God.
there
We're
was
actually we're going down the
yeah,
rabbit hole.
let's go down the rabbit hole for just 1 second. Um, Short story published in 1939, and then in 1947, it was adapted into a movie by a Goldwyn, like
Mhm. Yeah,
Goldwyn Mayer Goldwyn,
yeah, one of the originals.
by the elder Goldwyn.
Mhm.
And James Thurber, the author, hated it. He wrote them a letter telling them that it sucked.
Huh.
Yeah, he did not like the adaptation at all. Um, and then the younger Goldwyn, the son, grandson, son, I
Yeah,
think he's the
something like
son.
that.
Anyway, a younger Goldwyn wanted to remake the 1947 film. So
Hmm.
the Ben Stiller one is a remake of the movie that was based on the short story that was so different from the short story the author hated it.
But now he's dead, so he can't write a letter this time. He can't write a letter this time. So all we know, this could potentially be the definitive version of the short story that was always meant to be. But regardless, it does. It's well, it's not an MD movie, is the short of it. But it does have a lot of parallels, which is why we're talking
I
about it.
I
Obviously,
was surprised by how many MD beats this movie hit.
bro, it's so strange.
I
It's
even
so
looked up
strange.
the author, like the script writer, to
Hmm.
see if maybe he was familiar with maladaptive daydreaming, but I really couldn't find anything on him. So, who knows? Maybe he does, or maybe there's another thing that sort of I wanted to touch on while we were talking about this,
Hmm.
because I don't like to see when any media geared towards like escapism or imagination is
Hmm.
immediately compared to maladaptive daydreaming. Like a lot of people will immediately compare it. And it's not, imagination is so ubiquitous. in and escapism is so common that you can't, I don't know, we can't just call any story that has those beats like MD. I I don't know. Like it's fine to see yourself in characters,
Hmm.
but then to take the extra step and say this is maladaptive daydreaming. Like people do it with everything. People did it
Hmm.
with oh, what's her name? The Scarlet Witch. What was that called?
Absolutely no idea.
Oh, fuck. It was that Marvel one where she
One of the billion Marvel movies, but
God damn, no, it was a series. It was a TV series about the Scarlet Witch. Shit, I'm blanking on the name so
is
hard.
this the one where she's trying to like find a book, and then like the book would like solve all of her problems by bringing back her child or something like that?
No, I mean, like that's recognizable. In the end, there is a book, and she does have children, but no, her husband dies, and
Mm,
she's got like superpowers, so she creates an alternate reality where he's still alive, and the entire
right.
movie takes place in this like alternate reality. Anyway,
Naturally.
people drew a lot of parallels to maladaptive daydreaming with that, and honestly, I don't see the comparison.
Yeah, I have never watched it, so I don't see the comparison either, to be honest. That's because I didn't see the movie or the TV series.
WandaVision. It was
WandaVision? Or are you
WandaVision.
you're talking about the yeah, and they like and you would get stuck in the WandaVision if you got too close to the town.
Yeah, yeah, there was like a barrier.
Yeah, yeah, I vaguely remember that one. There's a lot of Marvel. There's a lot of Marvel all over the place. But yeah, no, I don't know. Maybe it's because I didn't watch WandaVision, but when like seeing like trailer and like the trailers and like passively watching like the episodes as I'm like coming in and out of like the main room of our apartment, like me and my roommate's apartments as they're watching it. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I just didn't quite click with it. This I click with a lot more. It's eerily similar for something that's not directly supposed to be MD.
Yes, definitely. This is I mean, as much as I sort of went into it with that like air of skepticism, like, oh, everybody always says it's MD if it's like got any aspect of imagination to it. Um,
Hmm.
and then I watched it, but like now I see where people are getting that from. This
Well,
definitely
for
has a
me, for me, the reason I see it is because it's like if there's a like because okay, everybody has an imagination, that's fine, but like there's huge contention between the main character Walter Mitty and the villain, whatever his name is, a guy who looks. What's really unfortunate is he looks really good. Like he's actually like his outfit and he's like well put together, but like. So like I get like he looks really good, but like man, his personality is awful. But there's huge contention between them because like the first thing like that I like see like you see that villain is it's like they meet right in front and the like so villain being super disrespectful corporate guy because he's like higher up the food chain I guess or whatever. Very strange, like super disrespectful. But when he first meets Walter Mitty, um, Walter Mitty just got a cake from his sister, and he's like holding it as he's like going to go up the elevator. And when he's talking to the villain in the elevator, he like zones out, and then and from that moment when he zones in onward, like the guy is like snapping his fingers in front of Walter Mitty because he's Walter's like zoned out, right? And he just doesn't like see it. And then when he zones back in, what is it? At some point in the movie, he says ground control to Major Tom, and he's the villain's like throwing things at Walter. Like he like tosses a paperclip at Walter, and it like jerks him out of his daydream. And I'm like, because most imagination, it's like, wow, you go into this imagination world, but like it actually shows that there are like visible negative consequences to this, and like I can sympathize with that a lot. It was really tough to watch. It actually hit really close to home. That was pretty rough.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I liked about, like, an MD beat that it hit, that it was showing the consequences. He missed his train, he's getting poked fun of and disrespected at work,
The
you know.
love interest is like, and nobody like obviously obviously like nobody gets it, right?
Yeah,
Nobody can like understand exactly because and he's like he doesn't even get it most of the time. He's just like, oh, I'm thinking of you. I think when he was talking to the female lead, and because he not only is it at like work, not only is it at home some of the time, it's also with like in his love life, like he's suffering from it because he was literally talking to the person he has a crush on, like at the park, and then what was it? It was huge. He goes on a huge daydream where they just like get together and then grow old together, and then suddenly as like he's like dying as in like an old person, he zooms back way back to this point like moment in the park. It's super like it's emotional, I thought.
yeah, and she says to him, like, because he, like, zoned out in her presence, and she
Mm.
says, "Oh, like, sorry that, I was boring you," which
And
is yeah, that stood out to me because, like, that used to happen with my husband, like, he thought I
mm,
wasn't listening to him and didn't care about what he was saying, and then we
mhm,
sorta see that reflected in Walter Mitty where, the woman that he's talking to that he is very interested in thinks that she is boring to him, and that he doesn't have any interest in listening to her, which is not true at all. And he brings it up later when they meet, after his adventure, after his growth, and he
mhm,
he tells her like, "Listen, that day in the park, you were not boring me. I was just
mhm.
daydreaming."
Yep. God, there was that very end where he brings the 25 to the villain, and he gives him a spiel. Like, man, that was cathartic. God, because you can see at the end of the movie once he comes back from his adventure that he's more like in the world than he was before. Like he's like present, visibly and mentally present more so than he was before for a couple different reasons, but primarily I think it was just cuz he took the time to be out in the world rather than like getting sucked into the monotony of whatever job he was at cuz he was a negative what was he? He was manager of the negatives for all of the like film and like stuff that was brought to him.
Yeah. Um, if there's one thing I wish for this movie, it would be that they made the villain less comically evil. Like there's a moment that is written, and as an audience member, you're meant to perceive it as the manager being an absolute dick, where he's, like, talking to Walter Mitty, and he's like, "I want number 25, the next time I see you."
Hmm.
Um, which is not, like, an unreasonable request, and Mitty has been lying to him up
Hmm.
until this point, telling him he has the negative when he doesn't. So he's like, "Bring me that negative." And Mitty just it's kind of like, whatever, and, like, goes to get on the elevator, and the manager stops him, and he says, "Hey, like, I need confirmation that you heard me." And you're supposed to read that as him being an absolute, you know, douchebag. But, like, he's not. Like, Mitty, they have this important thing that they need to put out. Mitty's been procrastinating on giving it to him, and he's not aware of it, but has been lying to him about having it at all. And Mitty, they have noticed that he zones out a lot, and he needs confirmation. He actually needs confirmation that Mitty heard him, because Mitty might not have heard him. We know this about his character.
Hmm.
So I think I get why that, like, they wanted to keep, obviously you need to paint, or they wanted to paint the protagonist as, like, the hero overcoming this struggle, and they wanted that big payoff where he tells him off in the end and stuff. So he's made to be like a big villain,
Hmm.
and he's portrayed as an absolute dickwad. But, like, when I saw that scene, I was like, that's something I need people to do to me. Like, if someone tells me something important, like my husband, I've told him to get confirmation, to ask for confirmation that I heard him, because I might not have. That's something that's actually been important to my, recovery and accountability. And it's something I
Hmm.
want people to do to me. Now, obviously, maybe Stiller's character, Mitty, didn't, want that at that point in time. But, like, I, I don't know. I don't know. That scene, I was annoyed. I was annoyed that the villain was being so villainized.
It didn't hit as hard as I thought it would, that one scene. Um, because like the villain, like you can see that he's like trying to like how do I put this, right? The villain, it felt like the villain was actively trying to be mean because he was like, still poking fun. Like not just like being mean because he's a mean person, but no, he was like actively trying to like demonize Walter Mitty's like I wouldn't call it maladaptive daydreaming, even though it really really looks like it is, like his zoning out. But I thought to myself, I was like, it didn't like it makes sense, like because the villain is like overly villainous in a way that like is really teetering on like breaking my suspension of disbelief. But that moment actually just felt like a normal moment. To be honest, that was probably him being to me. That was him being the most normal in the whole movie. Every like
Yes,
him.
yeah.
Like it was super strange. It's like okay, we're ramping up on the mean scale, the really mean whatever scale, and then suddenly there's just like this really low point to me where he's just like being normal and like actually genuinely asking for the job to get done, the job that he needs done to get done. Like it was very strange. It was like an outlier that very obviously was not meant to be an outlier, but as someone who has been in a similar position, not just on one side, Walter Mitty's side, but on both sides, it's like that just felt really normal. Uh, and then
Yeah.
every and then every other point was it's like, okay, look, you said it yourself. There was the point where he's getting stuff tossed at him, and it's like, just go to HR, just go to human relations.
Yeah, that's absolute bullshit to have your manager fucking throw anything at you, even if it was just a paperclip. And they're not just throwing things at him to get his attention. Like, they're standing there talking about him, like, hey, do you think if I threw something at him, he would snap out of it? And the guy standing next to him, who has worked with Mitty for a few years, says, like, I once threw a box of toner at him. Like, this isn't the first time he's had things thrown at him.
Mm-hmm.
Eh,
Uh,
Yeah, and that's
ah,
yeah, like, that's some bullshit.
it is. It's so and it's not bullshit. It's not like not just because it's not just for like it's just like all right, hold on. Let me rephrase that. It's not just BS because it's like poking fun at like people who zone out. It's just like I don't know, they looked like children. Like you could clearly tell, like if you looked at them, they were adult human beings that were really well put together and they were in their business suits and whatever. But it's like, bro, like I'm looking at you all and you all look like you're acting like you're in high school. How did you get this job and how have you been here for so long?
And I do wanna bring up something about Walter Mitty as as he was written originally, because there's, like, James Thurber, you can look him up.
Mm-hmm.
He's famous. You know? He's a
Mm-hmm.
touchstone in cartoons and creative media and things. there's such a thing as the Thurber man.
Hmm.
And how do I say this? Thurber, I did read the original story and I did read some of his cartoons and stuff just while I was sitting here waiting for the podcast to stop. He's got some high boomer energy. The original story and the Thurber man, which is like an archetype that has his name attached to it, is a diminished, ineffectual man, with usually a domineering woman in his life. They took out the domineering women in this adaptation,
Hmm.
but that's what Walter Mitty is based on. He's based on this like boomer idea of because you're not hyper masculine, you are emasculated, and and oh, that ball and chain, like my wife, she's such a nag kind of stuff. Um, and you can see that in all of his works. Like that's the kind of character that he draws a lot, and that's where Walter Mitty comes from. He's a man, um, originally, that is constantly emasculated, and that's why he escapes, because in his daydreams he can be the hero, where in real life he's like, "Yes, dear."
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, you can kind of see it with his sister, who is just really like front forward, like charge through sort of deal. Because Walter Mitty does have a sister in the movie, and she's like an actress sort of, and she just like goes off on her actress stuff. And my problem, I have a problem with that because it's like Walter Mitty is like trying to tell her like, hey, we need all this stuff done. Like the first time you see his sister, when she gives him the cake and like starts this like he goes into the elevator and the villain sees him with a cake, which is obviously like not super like quote business professional or whatever. When you first meet his sister, she's like really not, like, she doesn't have a sense of responsibility, I guess. It's very strange. She seems like super like you know when they like when movies or media will like the millennial thing, like the millennial or the Gen Z, and they're just not all put together. It's the archetype where they're like they don't actually, they just like what did she say? She's like, I just want to go to my yoga class or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever."
they made her like a little bohemian or something.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like they saw um that the Thurber man just was not going to work with a 2013 audience.
Yeah.
So they changed the women in his life from domineering to,
What
well,
would you call it?
his sister is flaky and his mother is very kind, but in the movie, what we learn about Mitty's past is that when he was, like, 17, his father died, and the next
Mhm.
day he had a mohawk and he was a skater boy. The very next day, he cut his hair and he got a job. So the women are not domineering him. He made the choice to give up on his dreams to support his family and fill the void that his father left behind, financially and responsibly. So
Mhm.
he's responsible for them. He's um, providing for them. He's buying his mother a new apartment and stuff, and his sister is flaky, but
Yeah,
and
he's
like
one of
not
the
really helping, but he
yeah.
doesn't.
He's similar to like what would another character like that be? Like Homer Simpson, who wanted to like work in a bowling alley, but instead he decided to work in a nuclear power plant to support his family. He's one of those types of characters, and I think it works really well in the movie.
Yeah, I think that's pretty normal. I was going to join the Peace Corps, but I had a family instead.
Hmm.
Like people make those decisions when they are settling down.
And it's not, it's not an easy one for sure, and it comes at a cost for a lot, like for just about everyone. It comes at a
Yeah,
cost.
especially at 17. And that's where I thought like there was also a parallel to MD, because w- w- I don't know that his day, like he's obviously had this zoning out, they call it, or this daydreaming thing for a while, but the movie doesn't say when it started. But if I had to guess, it would have started from the trauma of losing his father.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there's a
And
link there, I think, that a lot of MDers can relate to.
yep, it's just it's another you go down a checklist of things that you can sympathize with as a maladaptive daydreamer, and like that just there's just another one on the checklist. like trauma of some sort, or like something like some stress in your life that you'd like to escape from, right? Stuff like that.
Mhm.
It's pretty. I'm trying to. How would I put this? It's like I don't know. I don't know if they intentionally or unintentionally decided to hit these beats, right? Because I thought to myself, it's like, okay, if they didn't intentionally do this, is this maybe they were trying to go for something else, but ended up unintentionally hitting on the maladaptive daydreamer um, train, I guess. Like each of these individual things, like people like sort of suffer from, like a lot of people suffer from, where it's like, okay, I want to escape because my life is super stressful and I have a lot to deal with and I have to be responsible. Or there's also like I lost something very dear to me, so I have to become responsible, right? Life is mundane is another one, right? There's like all these tiny little things that sort of come together, and the way they chose to explore those sort of themes and all that just ended up resonating really well with the MD community. Like if it's unintentional, it's super it's really really lucky, I guess. It really is like a huge chance encounter for like all of these themes to come together, and for the movie to actually get done. And did the movie do well? I thought the movie did fairly decent, not like a box office like sort of huge like winner or anything, but like from what I understand, the movie was pretty well received.
Yeah, it actually, it had some it was middling. It wasn't a box office hit, but it wasn't a flop either. I actually wrote down 2 reviews of it that I wanted to ask you. Probably should have done this at the top, but
Hmm.
okay, just listen to these 2 reviews. Number 1, uniquely funny and unexpectedly tender, a personal journey of lingering resonance.
Hmm.
And review 2, a feature-length just do it ad for the middle-aged.
I like that second one. That's that one's it's so scathing. Oh my god. Well, yeah. Okay, sure. I guess it's a
I
just
can see
quality.
both.
So can I, but man, dude, that one's pretty yikes. Yeah, no, I think they're both right in some capacity, but it's like that really is sort of the truth, right? Okay, like I guess I'll start with the second one because I think that one's hilarious. Um, like the it's a just do it ad sort of for the middle age. Well, maybe okay, look, I guess it's for everybody, but it like in context, a middle-aged person is just deciding to go out and do their sort of thing. But when it comes to like growing as a person, like you can like throughout the movie, like at the start, Walter has like a huge MD problem. MD problem? Should I just call it an MD problem?
Yeah,
Because
let's just go with it. Yeah.
okay, cool. So at the start of the movie is a huge MD problem, but about halfway through the movie, well, I can't, what was it about 3/4 of the way through the movie, like 2/3 or whatever. But he gets back from his journey after talking to the artist that he had been working with for many years, because it turns out they had never seen each other, right? They were closely working together for 16 years, but they have never met face to face. And when Walter finally meets the what is it? He's a photographer,
Yeah, O'Connell.
O'Connell. They see each other, and and O'Connell's like, "You're the Walter Mitty, right?" And they have a tender moment. But like he explains where the photo is, and then of course they later find it, and then that part of the movie is resolved. But he comes back from meeting the artist, or sorry, the photographer, and the photographer was in what is it, some part of Afghanistan and like the Himalayan mountains somewhere around there. He was in he was in
Yeah.
the Himalayan mountains, right? But when going back to Los Angeles, he gets stuck in TSA because he was coming back from Afghanistan, a place that's like really dangerous. And they start grilling him for questions or whatever. And they eventually ask him, they're like, "Do you have literally anybody that you can confirm that can confirm your validity as a human being or whatever your what do you call it, your identity?" And throughout this whole movie, he's been it's this like funny B
Yeah.
plot. He's trying to put together this eHarmony account because Dimmer mentioned that he's trying to get together with the female lead, through like online dating, and on his online dating account, it's completely empty. So he like calls the guy at the start. It's the same guy at the train station when he misses the train. And throughout the movie, the guy just keeps calling back to help him finish his eHarmony account. And it happens like how many, like 5 times, and he's like, yeah, suddenly I'm in Iceland. You know, I fought a bunch of sharks, and the guy's like, that is great. I'm writing that down. I jumped out of a helicopter, putting that down there too. And he just goes throughout this journey. What is the guy's name? I forget his name, but
I can't remember the eHarmony guy's name either.
Oh, it's super cute, but he's like this like really bubbly guy, and he's like, yeah, you know, girls love what was it? He's like, girls love that kind of stuff, right? It's gonna look great on your account. But it's like every time he like calls at the weirdest time, and he's like, hello, and he's like, yeah, so your eHarmony account. And the guy asks, and he's like, Walter's like, oh, I'm doing this thing now, and he's like, great. And then Walter's like, I gotta go because he's suddenly got to do something else. So like he just like this guy keeps getting. Walter keeps hanging up on this guy.
Yeah, he's like, I'm on my way to a volcano.
Yeah.
The guy just believes him too. Like,
yeah, dude, I mean, he's a great guy, dude. He's so like at the very end, he comes back and he's like, I actually do know a guy, and it's the eHarmony guy. And when you see him for the first time, it's just like this big, like fat sort of dude in like a Hawaiian shirt, and he's great. And he's got this like sort of, it's not like slicked back, I'd say, but he's got like this super good haircut, and he's awesome. And so he comes back from Afghanistan, and this eHarmony dude buys him like a cinnamon bun. And one of the things that he says, actually, here, hold on. I was trying to mention exactly. Oh, I got sort of off track because this eHarmony guy, he mentions a couple things to Walter. First, he mentions, he's like, now clearly the way the scene is set up is they have 2 huge cinnamon buns on like a plate each, right? And they're sitting like a coffee sort of shop sort of table. Like Walter on one side and the eHarmony guy on the other, and the eHarmony guy's like, you got a lot on your plate, you know. It references like Walter has a lot going on because he's like recently like he's like getting fired or had gotten fired or something like that. And he's trying to get this like one piece of film. Now he's got to get a new job. He just came back from finding this guy. He figures out where the thing actually is. And for one, so he's got a lot of stuff on his plate. And then 2, not only that, he's just got like a giant cinnamon bun, like literally on his plate. So that's like a good scene. So that like he says that. And the other thing that he says is he's like, well, how about your daydreams? I think he actually did just call them daydreams. And Walter's like, I haven't been having as many of them now. Right?
Yeah. He's like, less now.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I've been having a lot less. So sure, it's a go do your sort of dreams thing. That this guy in this review said for like the middle age, but he misses the point wherein like one of the huge problems that Walter has is his daydreaming problem that was solved by going out and do your dreams for the middle aged, right? Like one of his like huge character flaws. Would I say it's solved? No, but it certainly helps. Like this journey of his has helped him. Like one of his huge character flaws is it has helped him overcome like a fair portion of it, I guess. It's like it's gotten better. Like his quote problem or like his one of his huge points of conflict has improved by going out there into the world and just saying, you know, fuck it, let me do this. Let me actually go out and like go find this guy in Iceland, because he mentioned several times throughout the movie. He's like what's her name? Cheryl, I think her name is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cheryl is like, why don't you just go to Iceland, right? And I think she means it jokingly, because when he calls back and he's like, yeah, I'm in Greenland, and they have like a talk where Greenland isn't Iceland, but she's like, oh, you're actually there. You actually went out and decided to do it, and he's like, yeah. So it's like, yeah, sure. I guess it is indeed go do your dreams for the middle-aged. But yeah, it's like it's also about like being out in the world and like being present in like life as it is. Because like if you look at the 2 sides of Walter Mitty, the one in the U.S. where it's all just like dead sort of like corporate job, whatever, where life is miserable and there's nothing to live for, etc., etc. Right? That's like the one side. But like there's the other side where like the world is huge and there's people and he meets a lot of people and like they're all like really good people. Like he meets a warlord. Like he meets a warlord out there.
Well,
and he
yeah,
just he feeds him like it's like, and this warlord is like they're like getting stopped at like a checkpoint or something, and he feeds this warlord his mom's like cake, the same cake that the photographer mentions he takes, like he took on his trip so that he could feed the people and get places, because you like people like food, and this warlord likes the food, right? And so he just eats the food and like lets them go past and like continue on their journey. It's like there's the work, like I guess corporate world of nothing matters and the world is awful or whatever, but there's also the other side that if you decide to go out and be present in this wide world of ours, that you actually meet a lot of people and you see a lot of things. And yes, it is colorful, and sometimes it's not exactly super like clean or great or like ideal, but like there's a world out there for you to explore. And if you do decide to go out and follow your dreams as a middle-aged person, yes, you'll see like way more than what meets the eye.
Yeah, I've a fair bit to say about this as well. Um, so I think okay, I have a couple thoughts. Uh, Number 1, I do think that going out and being in the world is something that can help with maladaptive daydreaming. It's something I'm utilizing in my own recovery. I am not going to ungoverned Afghanistan anytime soon, but I am making dates with my friends and I am keeping them and I am maintaining friendships and it is working and it is helping. Um, Obviously, this film has framed it in a very adventurous thing, but it doesn't need to be an adventurous thing. But I feel like that's um, a criticism that a lot of people would have of this film, that you can't solve your mental health issues by going on an adventure. But I do want to point out that Walter Mitty, there's actually 2 adventures in this movie. And I think people forget that. And I think they miss the point that the filmmakers had when they gave him 2 adventures. So let me explain. The first adventure is, Greenland, Iceland, where he needs to get this negative to meet a deadline at work. So he decides to go and do it. And on this first journey, he is still Walter Mitty. He is still like sort of he's
The
still sort
mirror,
of the
sort of.
Thurber man. Yeah,
Hmm.
like he is carrying that inside him. 2 people on this journey ask to be his friend, and he shrugs them off. So he is going out and he is doing things, but he's not really participating in the world. One of a deckhand asks, "Oh, this is so great. Do you want to be Facebook friends?" And he's just like, "Yeah, whatever." And then the drunk guy at the bar, the like helicopter pilot asks him to keep in touch, and he's like, "Yeah, whatever." He's carrying the middiness inside of him, no matter what part of the world he is in. And then he goes home, he fails, and he goes home and he gets fired. So now he's already fired. He doesn't need to meet this deadline anymore. He doesn't need to find this negative. He does not work for Life magazine anymore. And then he decides for himself to go to ungoverned Afghanistan. And in that journey, that's where you see him start to participate with the locals. He talks to the warlords and gives them cake. He plays soccer with the kids in the Himalayas, and he's in the moment. And him and Sean Connery have, when they're having that conversation at the top of the mountain, where they're talking about he, Connery is up there, or Connolly, whatever his name is up
Hmm.
there to photograph the ghost cat. And then they finally see the ghost cat and he doesn't take the picture. And he doesn't take the picture because he explains that some things are just so personal that he doesn't want to ruin it with the camera. He just wants to be in that moment without thinking about his work or lining up a good shot. And he doesn't take the picture because he just wants to be there in the moment. And that hit a big MD beat for me, because what we always hear is the best starting point to really get cured is mindfulness, is being in the moment. And then they go play soccer with the Himalayan kids, and Himalayan's not a country, but they're somewhere in Afghanistan. I don't know. Um,
Hmm.
he goes they and he's finally in the moment, so that the second journey, the first journey he's still Walter Mitty, the second journey he's, Walter Mitty redeemed.
Hmm. Hmm. Walter Mitty plus new game plus DLC, etc., etc. He's the better man. He is the man who has decided to grow. Because the first one, he's growing not of his own volition. Because it's like the first one, he has a goal that's determined by his work. And the second one, he has a goal that is determined by himself. Right.
Yeah. And I think we see too that he always had Walter Mitty plus inside of him. Like those sick ass skateboard moves,
Yep.
he was showing. He went to the park with his crush because she had to pick up her son, and her son was a skateboarder. So Walter Mitty used to skateboard when he was young, and he was really good at it. So he starts showing the kid tricks, and
Hmm.
um, and the crush doesn't see it, but if she had seen it, like that would have been impressive to her. That he's being kind to her son and also has this kind of cool, unique skill. Like he already had the tools to impress her. And he's also very good at his job. And for some reason, the photographer O'Connell, the super famous photographer O'Connell, really respects Mitty. He says that he respects him because he's the only one who shows O'Connell's work like the reverence that it deserves and needs to be presented at its best, and he appreciates that about Mitty.
Hmm.
So like, yeah, like he already has like these cool things about him. He's good at his job. He commands the respect of people who are also amazing at their job. He has these skills that would impress the woman that he's with, like or wants to
Hmm.
be with. But he can't bring them to the forefront um, until after he's made a change in his life and started living for himself.
Hmm. Yeah. One of the so that's so okay. I guess one second. So I guess ultimately the guy in that I guess second review you said is right. You like go out and do your dreams and all that kind of stuff. But like it's more than just that. It's not only more than just that. It's like to that's like taking a like a deep sort of piece of media and then like flattening it, right? Like a pancake or something like you have this 3D object that you then just put as like a flat piece of paper where you're disregarding like so many different layers of the movie that like makes it special, right? Or makes it special and makes it entertaining and then makes it worth a worthwhile watch, right?
Yeah, I think there's some subtext in this movie that, granted, is easy to miss, but I think it's a saying that he didn't need to go on this adventure. He already had everything he needed. He just needed to, I don't know, have the confidence or the life experience to bring it to the forefront. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like, obviously, that sounds good, but as a maladaptive daydreamer, um, like, people just don't always have that. You don't always. He happened to be really, really good at skateboarding. He happened to be really good at his
Yeah, it all
job.
lined up really, really well. Like
Yeah,
I thought to myself, I was like, all of these like one very niche, very specific things ended up lining up like very. It was like a one in a
yeah.
million chance sort of deal.
When you're the audience member, though, and you're thinking to yourself, like, I don't have a supportive, loving family like he does. I don't have a job that I am good at. I don't have any skills that I am good at. You can always cultivate those, of course, but Mitty had those to start with.
Yeah, and what's really okay, so well, first of all, I guess I've been meaning to say this for a bit. But like recovery is multifaceted, so like going out and doing these things won't like save you. They won't like fix you, I guess is what some people think. Is it's like this is just one avenue of like improving your mindfulness ultimately, right? And I thought to myself, I'm like, yeah, this won't like it just I'm not gonna say well, how do I put this? because I meant to say this like 20 minutes ago or like 10 minutes ago, but now it's a little off kilter. Um, but there's some things in this movie where it's like they had to line up perfectly. So I'm just going, I guess, okay. I guess I'm just going to say that. I'm going to say that recovery is multifaceted. So going out and being mindful and like traveling halfway across the world, um, it'll help you be mindful, but it won't like fix you because I think that some people like believe that you'll be fixed if you just do this one simple trick, which you won't. But in terms of like everything like lining up together perfectly, I was like, this is just like something that the writers did because like I like way they have a scene that specifically mentions like all these things where they're like going through Walter's old stuff as they're moving. And it turns out that they mentioned that he's a skateboarder and that he gets this little like his dad gave him a journal that he never used. And when I was watching the scene, I'm like, okay, they're going to use the fact that he's a skateboarder later. He's going to inevitably go on a journey and use that notebook and this backpack and all this other stuff. And they did. So it's like that was like really obvious foreshadowing to me. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like in terms of like growing on your own, the would I say it's an unfortunate truth? I don't know. But ultimately it's like Walter Mitty as a character needed other things to push him in life. You will have to push yourself usually. Like if like you have to just make the leap, you have to make the decision, and it's hard to, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah. And I would say, like, even I needed something to put, like, sometimes people just need something to push them. Having my son was what pushed me into recovery. So there are things, less fantastical than what Mitty is dealing with. But yeah, no, that foreshadowing, there were a few things that I didn't appreciate about this movie, like just watching it. Like, number one, you're sitting there watching it, and these are silly things, okay? But like, he got his passport in a day. That does not happen. Even they explain it with he put a rush on the passport, but even a rush on your passport, it's gonna take a couple weeks to come in. They should have just made him already have a passport. Like, I know that's dumb, but it broke me. I
I
was like,
thought he
"That doesn't
already
happen."
had a passport, to be honest.
No, because it's quick to miss, but it's in his checkbook. They show his checkbook a few times where he's balancing his accounts,
Hmm.
and the rush fee for his passport is in there. I know, like, something only I would notice.
That's
Um
so strange.
And, Walter Mitty does have the, dare I say, privilege of being a man. Um, if Walter Mitty were a female character, it would be ridiculous for him to travel to ungoverned Afghanistan.
Hmm.
Um, you know, that's just the way of the world. There are places that are not safe for a woman on her own. I
Hmm.
and not that it's very safe for a man on his own either, Jesus, but and he does make reckless decisions. That helicopter pilot that took him was flying in a storm, drunk off his ass, and Mitty initially said no. I was like, "Oh, good, he's making a good decision." But then he got on the helicopter anyway. Like that, don't get in a helicopter with a drunk pilot in a storm.
That sounds like that sounds like the start of a bad joke. It's like the Walter Mitty and a drunk pilot walk into a storm. Like I don't know. Like here's my thing is it's like I was like Walter. I'm like he's like jump in the boat, and I'm like okay. So he jumps into the tiny little boat, and I'm like, and then he jumps into the water. He tries to jump into the big boat and misses, and then loses the radio stuff. And I'm like okay, well. And now at this point, this we're just like nitpicking the movie or whatever. But it's like the movie's very good. Nitpicks
Yeah, there's
aside.
just there's just stuff about the way a movie, I guess my point was there are things that do not line up with life that just need to happen for a movie to be entertaining. He needs to make the reckless decision to move the plot along. He needs to get his passport quickly to move the plot along.
Hmm.
Like there
And like if you're people like us, you'll notice it. So it's like just because it's a movie doesn't discount the fact that there is merit to the decisions that he's making. Maybe not the reckless ones, but the like just the decision because it's like he could have just like left it to the company, right, and not gone over to Iceland or to Greenland or to even like start. Because like while he is making this decision to go out into the world for his company, he was ultimately the one who moved his two legs over there, right? And sure, he might have had some of the money. Like he has money problems in the movie, but like he has enough money to take a plane ticket to Iceland. It's like okay, so he does have like the how do I put it? How did I put it a second ago? It's like he could have just left it to somebody else, right? But he did actively make the decision to do these things, right? He took the initiative. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is it's like okay, sure, maybe getting into a helicopter with a drunk pilot in the middle of a storm, and like then what was it? Roller skating down like a giant ass like mountain, or not roller skating, like skateboarding like out down a giant ass mountain, only to go into like a giant like volcanic plumage or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
that's another one. He ignores all the signs that a volcano is about to erupt. He doesn't
well,
even notice, and he's not daydreaming at this point. He just doesn't notice because he's so
well, he
focused on
he
getting
does.
there.
Well, they do mention that he just doesn't know what that means, right? He doesn't know
Yeah.
what there's a word that means like eruption, I believe, and then he just doesn't know that it means eruption. So the kids are like, I don't think you know what that means, but sure, we'll take his toy anyways. And he trades it for like a skateboard. So it's like, yeah, in that case, but like reckless decisions aside, like he's still, maybe you don't just like because he flies over and he's like still in his suit. He doesn't have like a change of clothes or anything. He's like him in a suit with a suitcase, and it's like, all right, well, all right. I hope you're okay, Walter. But like, yeah, so maybe like us, you'll notice that like there's that kind of stuff that makes it a little bit unbelievable. But like taking the initiative and like taking the steps forward to like actively decide to like help in your recovery, or I guess at the bare minimum to like ask for help, right?
Yeah.
There's merit to that.
Um, Beats that did not hit MD, where you were like, "Oh, that's not a thing." I had a few.
All right, let's hear him.
All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. Hold on, Jesus. I lost my brain. Um, and of course these won't apply to everyone, but his daydreams are extremely situational and based in reality. Some maladaptive daydreamers do have those kind of daydreams, but most most have like a through line, sort of a plot where you are a recurring character or something like that, but his just go based on whatever is happening around him, like normal daydreams do. Um, so that was, while it's not out of the question for maladaptive daydreamers, it's not what I would say most of us do.
Hmm.
He And then I wish they had talked a little bit more about where it came from. It is definitely implied where it came from. It came from him having to set his dreams aside to support his family, and feeling like he missed out on the life he was supposed to have or was going to have. He missed out on all the adventure, because he had to support his family. And that's why he developed this escapism.
Hmm.
Uh, um, but if this film were about MD and written with MD in mind, I feel like they would have or should have um, gone into it more. Was he this way before his father died, and then it pushed him into it? And is it maladaptive at all? Like, because when something like that happens, it's actually really adaptive. To have a comforting, self-soothing outlet like your imagination. Just because 'cause you're daydreaming doesn't make it maladaptive. It definitely
Hmm.
looks maladaptive later in his life because, he can't pay attention at work.
Hmm.
And he can't, talk to people, and he's missing his trains and stuff. But a little, just some more talk about the progression there, um, would
Hmm.
have lent itself better to maladaptive daydreaming.
What I will say is it's like for the ones that you've mentioned, like the first like the former where you were mentioning how like the daydreams he has are like more like not most MDers don't daydream like that. I do, so it's like I resonated on a pretty personal level when he just like missed his train. Like so usually for me, if I'm at like a bus stop or something, like the people jostling me awake is probably the best way to get me to pay attention to the train. Because like if I'm waiting at a bus stop, I'll be like, okay, a massive train rolls through, and you start on like a Wild West adventure with like me at the center, or like someone at the center of like this massive Wild West adventure. And that's how I would do it. So like when he missed the train, I'm like, oh, that would not be the first time it's happened to me. So like I get that. But yeah, like where it came from, like he just has it and it's unexplained, which is it's implied, which is fine in most cases since it's not an MD movie. It's just something that Walter has, and since it's based on like another piece of media, it isn't specifically catered towards MDers. It like you said, if it was, there would have been a lot of like distinct creative, like there would have been different choices in the movie.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like if this were meant to cater to an MD audience or showcase maladaptive daydreaming specifically, I think they would have chosen different types of daydreams. Um, I think they would have talked more about how it developed over time. And I think they would have made a bigger deal about his meeting with Sean O'Connell. Like, as it is the climax of the movie.
Hmm.
But that mindfulness being present aspect is so important. Like, maybe it needed to be brought to the forefront a little more, maybe foreshadowed or lampshaded more
Hmm.
preceding that conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Now, granted, it has my favorite that scene has my favorite line in the movie, which I will now steal and use forever. But it was impactful, but not as impactful as I was hoping. There were
Yeah.
other scenes that were way more impactful. In particular to his like personal journey and like that sort of climax. And maybe it was meant to be super quiet and like super like self like retrospect or
Okay.
introspective.
Introspective.
Yeah, like a really introspective moment. But even still, it's like it's relatively quiet in like regards to the movie. So I guess that I would say that's like the second scene, which is kind of unfortunate since it's one of the really important scenes supposedly, or it's like emphasized. It's the second scene where it didn't quite hit the mark for me. It was like it was like an outlier when it came to like how I personally internalized it. Like it's supposed to be this big moment, and it just wasn't for me. It was just
Yeah.
another moment that was really it was important, but not probably like a climax for me. The climax for me was a different part of the movie.
Well, let me so you were saying like the scenes that hit the closest. I'll share
Hmm.
mine. Okay. So um just to explain for anyone who hasn't actually seen the movie. Number 25 of the negatives is missing, and that's the one that needs to be on the cover. He does not know where the photographer is to track it down, but he does have pictures that were in the set, like pictures that were taken around the same time. So he is using those to gather clues to go and find it. And the clues are hard to figure out. Anyway, one of the clues is just this weird shape. And then,
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, so he's sitting at home and he realizes that the picture he has in his hand of the weird shape is actually the edge of his piano, because it has like the same imperfection in it. So he gets up and he asks his mother, was this photographer here? And she's like, oh yes, he was a very nice boy. He was asking about you. And so Walter Mitty had this massive clue the whole time, but didn't know that he had it. And he says to his mother, "Why didn't you tell me that the photographer was here? Why didn't you tell me?" And she says, "I did in the produce aisle, but you he didn't hear her because he was zoned out."
And this is the yeah, and this is the exact scene where she ended up talking to her daughter, Walter's
Yeah, she's like,
sister.
"What do you call
And
it?"
what do you call it? And it's zoning out is what his sister says. And
I
it's like,
did in the produce aisle. That's what got me, because I was like, that's exactly something that would happen to me. I would be spacing out, zoning out. I would be MDing while I'm doing something else, walking around. My husband will tell me something important, and I would completely miss it.
mhm. For me, that's why it's like whenever I zone out, zone out. Whenever I get stuck on a daydream as I'm going about my day, if somebody is like saying something to me, or if I'm with someone, I've gotten into the habit of asking them if they talk to me while I was not paying attention.
I knew
Uh,
his mother obviously noticed that he didn't hear her. She
mhm,
said, You didn't hear me. You were like zoned out. You were doing that thing."
mhm.
So
And
I guess
I
she was just like, "Well, I guess it's not important. Never mind."
what like I don't want to do that sort of like, oh my god, it was so relatable, but like, damn, bro, like, there's a couple moments like that where like, yeah, that's what like really it, right? Like, why is this an MD movie? That's what it is right there. Like scenes and like comments and stuff like that,
All
right?
those little moments. The one where
All
he's
the,
mouthing the words. Yeah.
mhm. It's like. Because it's like the positives of like being adventurous or whatever are like ubiquitous, right? Like everyone wants to be free. Everybody wants to, be the what did the eHarmony guy say? He's like you didn't look like how I expected,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and he's like, and he said what? He's like, now that I see you, it's like instead of like you looked like a. Walter was like, what did I look like to you? And like in your head, and the guy was like, well, like a great piece of paper. But now that I see you, you're like Indiana Jones mixed with like something else, and I
Yeah,
forgot.
decided to be the lead singer of Coldplay or something like that. It was
Yeah,
funny.
and I'm like, there's, it's all the little things that sort of pile up, right? Because it's like everybody wants to be like Indiana Jones and also a lead singer of like a band and like be super famous and all that and have a ton of money and all this other stuff. But it's like it's the negatives that really hit the most, and like for anything, right? It's it's like the drawbacks, it's the negatives, it's like the struggles that are the most relatable to any one single person, right? Because we all have our struggles, right? And the struggles hit harder than just about anything else in life, whatever it is, whatever struggle it is. And it's like these individual struggles, like that Walter's going through in this movie. I don't think I've ever seen them like properly, or at least like what is it like so like sufficiently outlined as they are here, right? Like actively shown, right? Like people are looking at him funny. Like people are like what the evil guy and his cronies are like throwing things at him. Like people like know that he does this and like think it's super strange. They even have a name for like his family knows, his coworkers know, right? But like this is I think the first movie where I actually like see this being like, and I mean I don't mean like in a like in horror films there'd be like someone getting possessed or something like that where like there's just like a zombified sort of like stupor, but like this is the first time where you're just like it seems more real. Look, there's parts of this movie that don't seem very like believable, but that was like those moments where he's like not present and other people are just like messing with him, or they like look at him and they like see him doing this stuff. It's like that's where that's probably strangely enough that's the most real part of the movie. Not the fact that there's like a mean boss who's downsizing a company and he's just like a total asshole. Not like any of the like huge adventurous parts, right? It's just like it's literally just those moments where he's getting like looked at and like judged, or like just like people know that he's not there. And like not I
Yeah.
like I'm going to say it again. I don't think a single person in that movie, Walter included, knows what any of that sort of zoning out is. Like how does he describe it when he's talking to his crush? Oh, he's like, "Oh, I'm just thinking of you." And it's like, well, Uh, it's a little bit more than just thinking, I guess. Like what I thought, I think I verbally said, I'm like, bro, that is not just thinking. But I was saying stuff out loud the whole movie. I'm like, why? Why jump into the helicopter? Why is this guy an asshole? Walter, please, we're gonna miss your train. And then he missed the train. That's what I was sold on the movie, is when he missed the fucking train. I was like, okay, well, that hit pretty hard. That's really the hard part that really hit me.
Yeah, and that's really early in the movie too.
Correct, right? It's what, the second scene maybe? Because the first
Yeah.
one's where he tries to wink at the person online.
Just as like, Walter's recovery. I feel
Hmm.
like this movie kind of really does paint it as like no daydreaming is the best. Um,
Wrong. Wrong. Yeah,
because
that is
they
incorrect.
yeah, they show this movie is kind of split. I don't want to say it's split in half, but there's a lot of daydreaming um in the first part. And then when he starts going on his adventures, there's no daydreaming. Well, I mean, with the exception of like a couple little fleeting ones and the Major Tom solo. But
Hmm.
as the movie goes on, there is less and less fantasy shown. And by the time you get to the end of the movie, like you don't see those anymore. And this is not a movie about maladaptive daydreaming. If it had been made as one, I think I would have liked to have seen him interacting, just one scene, maybe two little scenes interacting more healthy with uh interacting more healthy with fantasy. Like it's still there, but it's not impacting him negatively anymore. Like I think that would have rounded it out nicely
Hmm.
to see that he doesn't have to give up his imagination.
Oh yeah, yeah. I like recovery. I'll say it again because I said it earlier. Recovery is, but like now I actually have like a good point to like mention it, or a good like position to mention it. Recovery is multifaceted. Being mindful is one of those like facets that like will contribute to a healthy recovery. So it's like this movie is all about mindfulness and nothing else. So I guess it would be more. It's a movie more about what happened, like the effects of being mindful in the world will get you to stop daydreaming. Like they will reduce your daydreams. The amount of times you daydream. That's what will happen if you are more mindful, at least in part. Is that the healthiest to properly recover from maladaptive daydreaming? I'd say no. It improves it, but like you're gonna need a little bit. You are. How do I put it, Dimmer? Like you can't like it's not like a fix. Like you're gonna still have your like daydreaming moments. So it's
Yeah,
like
he definitely like at the end of the movie, like you don't see any more fantasy. He gets the girl. He's featured on the cover of Life magazine. Um, it really ends with everything perfect and rosy for him now. Where as a maladaptive daydreamer watching it, I think would have been more poignant to see. First of all, the fucking get the girl is so dumb. Women aren't prizes. Like,
it didn't feel right. Well,
it
like
didn't
okay,
it didn't need to end with them, beginning a relationship. It could have been platonic. Maybe she was back with her husband because there's a scene where he thinks she's back with her husband, so he doesn't speak to her. Like maybe she was, and that's okay. Just be friends. Like it doesn't need to be a get the girl situation, and it doesn't need to be a no daydreaming me equals perfect life situation either. They could have shown that he's still an imaginative person.
yeah, I God, I get it. Both of them were like kind of awkward throughout the movie, so it's like, oh, they can like grow together as one like sort of single family unit or whatever. But like, I don't know. Like, here's the thing, right? He goes on the second journey where one of the facets of the second journey is he thinks that he's just not going to get the girl, so he like goes out and just actively pursues like that sort of second journey on his own. And I feel like that's like one of the reasons he did decide to just go out and decide to take that initiative on the second journey is because he was convinced he wouldn't get the girl, right? So he just went out on his own to like clear his head. At least that's what it looked like to me. So it's like it's I don't know. I don't know. Get the girl is dumb to me. I don't like look. Someone will get mad at me for it. I don't like the get the girl thing. Like because every
Yeah.
movie that it's one of those things where like every movie has to have it. It's just like checked off on the list. I don't know. It didn't feel like dude, leave that for a romance movie. Like I'm not here for the romance. I'm here to see Walter Mitty like grow as a person, which he did, and it was still a very good movie. But like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously I'm picking at things, but I will say this movie, even though it wasn't made with maladaptive daydreaming in mind, I think is one of the better representations of it, which is weird
mhm,
to say because it's not about maladaptive daydreaming specifically, but it hits enough beats. The mindfulness, the mouthing the words, the negative impact to his life, the moments with his mom, I told you in the produce aisle, that is all solid MD stuff.
mhm. Yeah, that ugh. The MD stuff, like okay, so like if I wanted to get like a genuine sort of like I don't know if I'd call it a review, right? Because like we've been just reviewing like the plot and what we like and dislike this whole time, but it's like if I had to summarize my thoughts on the movie, right? It's simple. It hits like all of the good stuff is all the MD related stuff. Yes, it's an adventure like movie, but like it lacks like suspension of disbelief in a lot of different parts, but it stays grounded because of his like maladaptive daydreaming. That's what grounds the movie for me, and that's what makes it like a good watch. That's why I enjoy it. And I like the very end bit where like he actually like confronts the villain and just like he does the he or like earlier in the movie the villain says something to him where he's like Walter's like I've worked here 16 years, I'm the manager of whatever, and the villain's like, well, put that up on a plaque at your next job. So like Walter goes like at the very sort of end when he confronts the villain. The villain obviously is one of those brown nosers to like his superiors, and that's how he got his position. So it's like you can see in the boardroom like the villain's like looking at his boss, right? But like Walter walks into the room and the villain's like, "Oh, welcome," or "Not welcome because you don't work here anymore." And then Walter he's like, "Here's number 25. You have 2 days for the cover." And then like he goes and puts the number 25 on there, and he goes on his like Walter goes on his stick where he's like he gets on his soapbox for a second and says, "Look," because he points out he goes to the villain and he says, "Do you know what our slogan is?" It's so fucking funny. Villain is like, "Life. I'm loving it." Like clearly has and
That's
clearly has
McDonald's.
no idea, and Walter's like, "That's McDonald's." Um, and like Walter mentions, it's like, look, I get it. You have your marching orders. Like, you have to downsize. But, like, the people here believed in our slogan, and they're the ones who built this company. Or they're the ones who, like, built this magazine. They believed in the slogan. Um, and so at the very end, like, as he's saying all this stuff, the fucking villain shifty eyes to his boss, and you can clearly tell he's not very comfortable getting called out. Because Walter's like, look, I get it. You have your marching orders. Just, you don't need to be such a dick. And then there's like a really nice moment between Walter and his junior, because they both worked in the negatives room. It was very good. Like it's super nice. That was probably the highlight for me. Not the mindfulness bit with the photographer, which was very good. It was nice, but like that bit at the end where he's like, "Look, like we believed in this, and like you don't have to be so fucking awful." That was my moment, right, when I enjoyed that a lot. Those were the parts that I really sort of came by and was like, yeah, like that because it made sense, right? Maybe not walking into a boardroom, especially since he's no longer employed there, but like he went and got like he got it. He got number 25 and he put it there, and he got himself on the front page because instead of the I think the guy said snow leopard or something like that, or at least it's implied to be a snow leopard. But at the very end of at the end of the day, he like we never see the picture. Like not a single time in the movie, like this mystical photo that everyone's looking for, like Walter's looking for and the company needs and all this other shit. It's like no one ever sees it, and like it's mentioned by his junior. Like his junior is like, so what was it? Like Bigfoot, like a unicorn, Sasquatch, and Walter's like, I didn't even look at the photo. It's like we never know what it looks like, but still.
We
And at
do.
the very, hmm?
We do know what it looks like. Well,
the
I only to the final scene.
No, the final scene, that's different. That's like the different picture.
No, that's number 25.
Is that number 25? Wow,
That's number
really?
25. That's why he was that's why he was
Uh,
at the house taking
Oh,
pictures of the piano and talking to his mom. He was trying to find Walter to take a picture of him.
oh, okay, that's good. That's really good. All right, never
Yeah.
mind.
Number
Ladies,
25 was always Walter.
that's really nice. Okay, there you go. I thought it was this. They said they implied. What did he say? It's a ghost leopard. Is what the photographer
Yeah, the
said.
ghost leopard is the snow leopard is called the ghost cat.
The ghost cat, and so he implied that it was a ghost cat or like a snow leopard, but the ghost cat was Walter all along. Because this is my favorite line in the movie. He says, let me see if I can get this right. I want to get this right. Um, he says, beautiful thing. I think it's beautiful things don't ask for attention. In which case, if that is very much the case, then Walter he considers something very beautiful, and Walter never once in his 16 years asked for attention. Never once. He worked the
Right, yeah.
hardest to get all of those beautiful pictures, which makes sense now. Now that makes sense. So, anyways, we're going to pretend that I didn't have that wrong the whole time, and that I got it right from the start. But yeah, I guess the final thing for me is it's like the MD beats are what makes the movie worth it. Even if some parts of the movie, like if you look at it really, really closely, if you want to do the cinema sins effect where you like overanalyze everything and are like miserable and just don't want to enjoy the movie for what it is, I guess. At least that's how cinema sins was described to me. Um, like if you want to overanalyze the movie, yes, there's a lot of things that are really like the suspension of disbelief gets hurt because of it. But the MD beats are what make it worth it.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely see why this movie gets compared to it a lot, and I can definitely see the case that you can make that Walter Mitty in this iteration does indeed have maladaptive daydreaming. I think you could make that case. I think there's a case to be made for him not, especially knowing the source material, um, and how the character was conceptualized and, why things are the way they are, but overall, yeah, I think you can make a pretty decent case for it, and I think it hits enough that it will resonate with maladaptive daydreamers, and I think if you actually watch the movie like, I watched this movie with a pen in my hand because I was taking notes for this podcast, so I feel like I noticed things I might not have otherwise noticed, like, like, I noticed those people asking to be his friend and him shrugging them off, and that he already had these skills that his crush would like, that he already had everything he needed. So I think if you watch it with a little bit of an eye, you can get something deeper out of it, or you can just watch it because it's a beautiful movie. Like the places that they shot their scenes are beautiful places.
Like the
it's
other review,
it's
the other,
lovely.
yeah, it is. The other review that Dimmer went over, like says that yes, it is like it's a beautiful movie. It's like it indeed is, right? Like for contrast, I did not watch with pen and paper in my hand. Like I noticed a lot of the same stuff, but clearly I missed a couple things, right? Clearly I missed a couple things, but like watching it for what it is, like it hit close to like and look, I might be a maladaptive daydreamer, right? So like because I'm a maladaptive daydreamer like a lot of these things hit a bit more close to home, which is why I like the movie a lot more. But like there's even if you don't watch with pen and paper in your hand, it's a beautiful movie. Like a lot of the shots are really nice, and you can clearly see him grow as a person, right? And
Yeah.
the one guy who thought it was just a "Do It Your Dreams" ad for middle-aged people, I'm sorry, guy. I appreciate your input, but you seem like you're fun at parties, so I will let you be fun at parties. So
I don't know, I think that wraps up pretty much everything I wanted to say about the film.
yeah, me too. Side notes or like final postscripts. It was very like as a movie, entertaining. I liked a lot of the jokes. There were a lot of jokes in the movie that I like. They were small jokes, but I liked them all the same. It's not a comedy movie. It is a nice bit. It's nice to watch. I watched it on Amazon Prime. You got to pay for it though, like two or $3 or something like that. Super cheap. You can watch like clearly you have a couple different places to watch it. YouTube, Amazon. I think HBO Max has it.
I think that's what I watched it on.
So yeah, like there's a bunch of different places to watch it. You can get DVDs and Blu-rays for it. Is it the best movie I've watched? Um, it's not my favorite, but it is very, very good, and I would very much put it on my list of recommendations.
Yeah, yeah, it's not an amazing movie, but, like, I probably won't rewatch it, but I definitely don't feel like I wasted my time. It's a pretty decent movie.
If you are a maladaptive daydreamer, we as your influencer overlords tell you to rate it a 10 out of 10. It is the greatest thing you have ever seen. But otherwise, it's very good. Make sure to give it a watch. And if you know someone who has MD, or do like you think they have MD, you watch it together with them and see what you both think. Right? It's certainly fun all the way down. There you go. Final tier list score. Good, had fun, did enjoy, especially as someone who doesn't watch movies.
Yeah, yeah, It was good. My takeaway is, yeah, middle shelf movie. It was fine. It was good. No complaints, except for all the complaints I had in this podcast. But those were little things. Like, the podcast is about talking about it a little deeper. If I was
Naturally,
recommending a
naturally.
movie to my friend, I might say, hey, you might enjoy Walter Mitty.
If I'm recommending a movie to my friend, watch Sherlock Holmes from 2007 with Robert Downey Jr. and then watch the sequel from 2010.
Oh, if we're recommending movies, The Fall. Hold on, because it's not the one you think it is.
I don't know what The Fall is either way, so yes.
The Fall from 2006. That's the one you want. Watch that. That's good.
Understood.
That is my recommendation. If we're recommending movies.
And then that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's it.
That's it. We might, just housekeeping. There might not be an episode for a month or two.
We might have to skip 1 or 2 episodes. Unfortunately, everybody, scheduling issues scheduling is becoming increasingly difficult this time of year. But we should be back on our BS starting May-ish. Mid-May is likely when we'll start up again. Where there's a lot of issues going on right now, and we're sort of suffering from a couple of them. So, but we're not done. You thought we were done. You thought you could get rid of us, but no, we are still here, and we have a lot more we want to talk about.
Yeah, don't worry, we'll be back.
Yeah, we will indeed be back, but we will have to take a small hiatus. And we're not talking like the 10-year hiatuses that some places will go to, or like forever hiatuses. It's only going to be for the equivalent of what, 2 episodes maybe?
3? Yeah, 2 or 3 episodes.
Because it's 2 weeks each. But yeah, we'll be back. And you'll like your lovable 2 podcast hosts will be back. Don't worry, we're just fine. Anything else?
Nope, that does it. Thanks for listening to this episode of Parallel Lives. We come out the 1st and 16th of every month, except for this coming month, as just stated. And you can listen to us on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube especially if you want to leave a comment. Ring bells, subscribe, follow, whatever those buttons are, do it.
Ask your local postman, ask your local milkman.
And thanks for listening. Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Stay safe, everybody.